Welcome to the Unbroken Arrows podcast. This is Greg. My guest is Lisa Herkenrath, and Lisa was a participant at the Casting for Recovery retreat held earlier this month at Ponca State Park in Ponca, Nebraska. So, Lisa, thank you for joining me today on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, Lisa, this was it was a great weekend. I was there on Sunday to talk to some people and to watch and observe your Sunday morning fishing portion of the retreat. And I'll have to tell you, for Northeast Nebraska, you got probably the best 3 hours that I've ever seen in Northeast Nebraska with regard to no wind. It was beautiful, sunny, just about the right temperature. So was the whole weekend good weather, or was that something that was just unique for me to see on Sunday?
Oh, the entire weekend was beautiful like that. It really was a perfect weekend.
For those not familiar with the organization Casting for Recovery, this is an organization that supports women that are at any stage in their journey with breast cancer. And Casting for Recovery is a nationwide organization, and they hold retreats in nearly every state. But if I understand correctly, Lisa, you're from Kansas, and you came up to Nebraska for the retreat because there was not a retreat in Kansas. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
So those that aren't familiar with Casting for Recovery, from your perspective as a participant, what can you tell us about Casting for Recovery?
Well, I initially had just happened upon the organization in a search. I know there are similar organizations for veterans and people suffering through PTSD. And just in researching that, I had never fly fished before. And I saw that there was this Casting for Recovery that dealt primarily, and in fact, only with breast cancer survivors and patients and thrivers. And I just thought, oh, well, that seems really interesting. And of course, I saw immediately that Kansas did not have a chapter. And in looking, I realized that the Nebraska chapter met at Ponca State Park, and that is kind of a lot of what initially sparked my interest in attending, because I have a family history of camping at Ponca State Park from growing up in that area of the state. And I thought, oh, I know it's beautiful, and I would love to get back there, and it's a great cause and something I would like to be involved in. And then that's when I looked into it a little further.
So if I can ask, Lisa, where are you at in the process or your journey with the initial diagnosis of breast cancer to where you are now?
Sure. So I was diagnosed in 2021, and I went to KU Med in Kansas City. And initially, they had thought that a double mastectomy, a removal, would take care of everything. I had a DCIS, but then I also had a carcinoma with lobular features. So I actually had 2 different spots on my right side. I chose a double mastectomy because at the time, I was like, I did not ever want to have to go through this again, and didn't want to have to worry about going through it again. And I was told at the time that surgery would take care of it. And unfortunately, pathology came back after surgery, and it had spread to the lymph nodes that they had sampled. And at that point, then I had to make a decision about what I was going to do about further treatment. And rather than going a surgical route and continued, lymphedema issues, I chose to go through chemo. And after chemo, then based on the type of cancer that it was, they suggested, and the location, because it was very deep, and they had told me that I had probably been there for several years before a mammogram had detected it. And I had gotten yearly mammograms. It just was not detected. And so when it finally was, that's when they, said, well, we really suggest radiation. So I went through radiation, and, just like with everyone's journey, I had, some bumps and complications and some, hospital stays and surgeries in between there, trying to get through. But I did get through all of that treatment. It took me about a year. And then I started the reconstruction phase, and I am still kind of in that phase. In the meantime, I've been raising my 2 teenage boys and trying to be there for them and, maintain everything else that I need to do. So I kind of take my time in between surgeries and make sure that I'm healing properly. And so I am right now at no evidence of disease. I'm at NED. I am on hormone therapy because I was estrogen and progesterone positive. So I will be on hormone therapy for another 7 years minimum.
Okay.
My cancer, they are not able to monitor. I don't get scans. I don't get mammograms. There's no way of knowing. So we just hope that the controlling hormones keeps any possible spread at bay. And then, I just evaluate every year where I'm at.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And that's a story that is too common in terms of people that are going through different types of cancer. My first wife was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in September of 2019 and passed away in November of 2019. And so it was from diagnosis to her death, just a little bit over 2 months. It doesn't matter, what type of cancer I think that we're talking about. I think that, as we say on our podcast here, that it's hard to find anybody that has not had some type of impact in their life with regard to cancer, whether it's personally or whether it's family or friends or so on. So thank you for sharing that, Lisa.
Well, and thank you. And I'm sorry for your loss. I can't even imagine. I'm thankful that you are sharing people's stories, and your mission is admirable.
Well, thank you for that. The question that I have next for you is about the support systems that you have and you have in place and that are available to patients that have breast cancer or any type of cancer. But I think that one of the things that people need and it helps in terms of the healing process are the different types of support systems. And on the first line, I'm sure it's your family. But what different types of support systems do you have that help you in this journey?
It was very interesting to me that the one thing that I noticed when I was at this retreat in Nebraska, and there were numerous people there that even spoke about the resources that are available to women and other cancer patients as well in Nebraska. The organizations that are available and the outreach available, I have found that there's just really not as much of that here in Kansas. Truly, it was kind of inspirational to me. I would love to, and I have spoken with some of the people involved with Casting for Recovery, that they are trying to get that at least down here in Kansas, and I would love to be a part of that eventually. I here in Kansas, I'm involved with the American Cancer Society post-diagnosis, but at the time when I was going through things, I wasn't aware of a lot of the opportunities and a lot of the things that were available. And that's kind of become a passion of mine, is to try to reach out to people. And I am a speaker through ACS and different things, just because it's just like you said, it is so important to have support. And, in my case, I went to treatment over an hour away, and transportation was difficult and communication was difficult. And, so there are a lot of issues that Even having people in my family that had gone through cancer, you just don't realize until you are going through it yourself, all of those things that add up. So, yeah.
One of the things that you just mentioned, or the word you used, was awareness. And I think that's something that, just from my own experience, and the experience from my family, my children losing their mom, we had no idea of the different types of, and we were living in Omaha at that time. So, but we had no idea of the resources that were available. And I think that one of the things that one of the hospice nurses that worked with my family said, and this is advice to all our listeners, is don't be passive about it. Ask. Try to find out what you can, because there may be things that are out there that people aren't aware of or you're not aware of. And the other thing is that it's not selfish to be able to be the person to be asking about those different types of supports and to find out what they are, because for those, like for me personally and my children, those supports didn't end, or the need for those supports didn't end with the loss of a loved one. So there's the importance of the supports throughout the journey, and then the supports throughout the rest of life experiences. So one of the things with Casting for Recovery that is, I think, one of the pillars that they stand on is helping those that are part of their retreats experience nature and experience its healing powers. And that's one of our objectives with our Unbroken Arrows podcast, is to encourage people to seek the outdoors, use the outdoors, and use nature for that healing side of things. After experiencing the retreat at Ponca State Park, did you experience nature in a way that it was healing for you?
I did. I really did. I was not, I have camped my whole life. I come from a family of, people that, hunt and fish, and we love the outdoors, but I was not prepared for just how connected I would feel there. And I, like I said, I think I have a bit more of an emotional attachment to that particular location. Mm-hmm. But the setting was just, absolutely beautiful. And, everyone there was so thoughtful, and all of that was wonderful. But I started to feel that, especially on Saturday. We went for a walk, and we were advised to, as we were, thinking of things, let it go. And as we were, hiking through the woods, and we're all quiet and we're reflecting, and it's kind of that idea of truly reflecting. Reflecting means to reflect, and you are reflecting that back rather than absorbing. And there's so much of the cancer journey that you absorb. And, to your point of asking, yes, there's so much that you absorb everything, and you just take it in, because it feels like this is a burden that you're alone in bearing. And it was very nice to be able to just be there. And it really was beautiful. The sun was shining the whole time, and the leaves were changing color, and I had never seen that pond before. It was just a beautiful setting.
Well, the weekend itself, and it's Casting for Recovery, so it implies fishing, and you'd mentioned that you'd not been fly fishing before, and that's what the reference to casting is, because it's a fly fishing retreat. But that's not all you do, and that's one of the things that when I interviewed Linda Lovegren, who is the co-coordinator for the Nebraska Casting for Recovery, I interviewed her earlier in June, and she said that it's a weekend, and you just alluded to it as well, to make connections. It's a weekend for women who are on a similar journey in life with regard to their diagnosis of breast cancer. They can connect, and they get to recognize that there are others that, first off, care, and secondly, others that are experiencing some of the same things that they are, that maybe they don't. And I, for my own personal experience, losing my wife to cancer, you start to think that maybe you are the only one that's experiencing that. And when you get around people and you share, you recognize that there are others that you can talk to. So this weekend, if you would, just kind of summarize, Lisa, what types of activities were part of the weekend, because fly fishing is part of it, but the fly fishing actually I think was just the last day, right, for about 3 or 4 hours or so. So what all different types of activities took place during the weekend?
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. Cancer is such a lonely, and any illness really can be such a lonely, isolating experience, regardless of the support that you have. And to be around people that understand, to be around, other people that can share that experience. Just that in and of itself was a big part of the weekend. We started Friday night with, there was, the introductory session. We did have a campfire. It was perfect night for a campfire. And, we got to know each other and shared some laughs and some stories. And then we were all in cabins, groups of 4. And so we got to know our cabin mates and the people that we were, going to share our time with most closely. And Saturday was a really good mix of both indoor and outdoor activities. So we got to appreciate being outside. And we did have the instruction on fly fishing, on tying flies, on the process of fly fishing and all of that entails, which was, so informative. We then got to practice tying flies, which, as far as I know, none of the participants had ever done before.
Mm-hmm.
So those women working the retreat, they had their work cut out for them with the majority of us.
Sure. I understand that. I went to a fly tying or a fly fishing club just to observe one time, and they sat me down right away and put me in front of the tools that they make the ties with, or the flies with, and boy, they had a laugh at me. So I can imagine if all of you had never tried that before, I'm right there with you.
Oh, yes. A room of 15 women that, women or men, I guess it doesn't matter, but in particular, this case, 15 women that had never done it before. And, she picked up the first tool and said, okay, grab the, and we're all like, which one is that?
Exactly.
So,
Help us here.
exactly. So, their schedule, we regularly ran behind schedule,
Mm-hmm.
because we did all get very close to one another, and we all, kind of got the gift of gab with each other, and the joking and laughing and that type of thing. But we still had time to fit, quite a bit in. That day, we also went outside and actually we were practicing with the rods, our casting.
Mm-hmm.
And that also, was a very interesting experience. It's so very different when you're actually doing it, because I felt like I did it really well on Saturday, and then Sunday came and I was not nearly as confident. But of course, we did also, we had some just excellent meals that we shared, and had time to sit down and meet some of the other people and the other people attending and the great women that were there that were, coordinating and volunteering their time. We had a health and awareness session that really was amazing to me, and so very helpful. I mean, I'm, 3.5 years into my journey, but still there are so many questions and so many things that come up. And, oftentimes, I have an excellent team of medical professionals, but they're very limited on time.
Mm-hmm.
And they also, this is what they do, so yes, they have patience for my questions, but a lot of times, there's things that, they're like, oh, you don't need to worry about that. Well, but I am,
Mm-hmm.
So it was very helpful to, and to also hear that there were women that had, the same concerns. And, the one thing that I have found out about any cancer in particular, but in particular breast cancer, is every single diagnosis is different.
Mm-hmm.
Every single woman that I have ever talked to that has been diagnosed has had a different experience, a different diagnosis, different treatment, and so our journeys are all so very different from one another. And being able to take from that and learn from each other it really was invaluable to me.
Well, that seems to be something that I guess would be, if I can take what you just said and kind of turn it around a little bit, that would be your advice to others, is to start those conversations. Because again, when you feel isolated to start with, and then what you just said about how every diagnosis is different and every treatment is different, you don't have then a lot of people then to visit with about the same exact shared experience. So to seek those others, or to seek others just to have those conversations, to find that out.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I gained, some lifelong friends and relationships along the way, that, I'm truly grateful for as well.
Well, you mentioned that you haven't fly fished before, but you did mention that your family did camp and hunt, fish, those types of things. Was the retreat something that, offered up a new maybe hobby for you with regard to fly fishing, and a desire to do that again?
I had a very good experience on Sunday. My guide was amazing. And, I had been, just appreciating being in nature and appreciating the setting and the company. To be honest, I wasn't really making the connection with fly fishing until we were actually standing on the edge of the pond, and my guide said to me, we were talking about spin casting and regular fishing, and he was trying to break my habits. And I'm not very good at that kind of fishing either. My boys, they laugh at mom attempting to do it, but they appreciate, that I try. But, he was attempting to break some of those habits. And he said to me that the reason why fly fishing is so therapeutic and why it works in these type of situations is because you have to be completely present.
Mm-hmm.
And your mind cannot wander. You cannot be thinking about anything else. It's not like regular fishing where you can be daydreaming about something else or worrying about something else or have your, mind wandering. You have to be actively present in every step of the process and watching and anticipating through the entire, every single cast. And it's true. And those few hours that we were on the pond on Sunday, I did experience that really one of the first times, really, like in the past, however many years that, my mind did not wander. My mind did not, have, all this racing going on with everything else. And so I really appreciated that mindset. I appreciated that, he shared that with me, as well as his patience for, I caught a fish on one of his casts. And then by the time I was casting on my own, I caught a fish on one of my own casts. And even if I hadn't caught any fish, I think I still would have truly appreciated the process.
Mm-hmm.
But catching the fish and holding the trout and releasing and watching them go back in the water, just that whole cycle, that whole process really was meaningful to me. I know Diana had said that she had gone to a clinic, like a week-long clinic where she had learned how to do it. And I see that might be something that I would try, in the future. I might look into that. So yeah, that could very well be that maybe it would be something that, I would pick up at some point. I know my boys would be thrilled if that would be something else that we could add, but yeah.
Well, you mentioned your guide, the person that assisted you on the bank while you were fly fishing, and they were your mentor, and these are volunteers. Diana, you mentioned Diana. I think Diana's in charge of that. And when I arrived on Sunday, I went to check with Linda and all of the retreat participants. You were wrapping things up in the morning there. And so I had time to go out and visit with some of those volunteers that served as guides that morning. And it's interesting to learn that each of them have a story, and many of them have a story as to why it's important that they volunteer with the Casting for Recovery program. What was your experience then? Describe maybe a little bit what Sunday morning was like, because I know that as everybody was lining up for the picture with their fishing partner, it was just from a my perspective of standing back and watching. There was a little anxiety, there was a lot of excitement, but it was, in my words, it looked like instant camaraderie, and I thought that was pretty neat. I thought that was special. So describe just, what Sunday morning is like for those that might be interested in attending a future Casting for Recovery retreat.
I would agree. There was a little bit of anxiety, definitely, some nervousness, being with somebody who obviously they know how to do this, and what is their level of patience and understanding going to be. And I know that they have volunteered their time and they are there willingly, but even so, I felt like, maybe, I needed a little bit more remediation than maybe they would have been familiar with. But I know all of the women really did have great experiences with their guides. My guide in particular had said he has done this 14 years. And he was pretty proud of the fact that all 14 years his partner has caught a fish. So I was
that
thankful.
Was no pressure for you.
Right, exactly. Yes. But I was thankful that he was pretty determined that we were going to get a fish that day. The fish were not the most cooperative on that morning. Mm-hmm. But it really was about the experience. And, I did, right away, I was put at ease. My guide, we, chatted about, our, where we were from and everything. And it is surprising, how much you have in common. And So that was a really good experience, and I was so appreciative of everybody that was there, and just looking around. That was the nice part about being in a smaller pond is, I could look around the pond and I could see all of these women that I had gotten to know over the past 2 days. And, they're smiling and they're laughing and, we're cheering for each other. And there was so much positivity and encouragement. And, that was not just because of the atmosphere, not just because of the environment, but all of the guides there really were there to, help us get, into that mode of fly fishing and feeling some success, and also being able to escape the reality of our diagnosis and our medical issues for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Well, earlier you used the word reflection. So, in reflection, then, what did attending the retreat mean to you?
I hesitate to say, life changing. It's very cliched, but I did come out of the weekend looking at things a little differently, realizing that I tell people to advocate for themselves, but I realize that I have not necessarily advocated for myself throughout my own journey.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that there are so many opportunities and there are so many ways to look past your diagnosis. Some of the attendance there, some of the activities, just so many of the things there made me realize that there really is life beyond cancer. And it like you had said, it truly is something that it doesn't matter if somebody is in remission or not, or it's something that will affect the rest of your life and the lives of the people closest to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the thing that I took away is that doesn't have to be a negative necessarily, that there are ways to put a positive spin on things. There are ways to reflect positively and to make the most of it and to take away those things that are good.
So then, if somebody was listening to this podcast, or someone was listening and they maybe have had a diagnosis of breast cancer, or maybe a listener knows of someone, a friend or a family member that's been diagnosed with breast cancer, and they are listening to something like this for the first time, not being aware that these types of programs and opportunities are out there, what would you say to them to help encourage them to at least explore the attending of something like a Casting for Recovery retreat?
I think my biggest advice is to try to, it's important to, sorry, I'm struggling to express.
You're fine.
I think it's important for everybody to approach your diagnosis and your journey in the way that you need to, but to not ever feel like you have to be forced into dealing with it on your own, or to be in isolation, or to deal with it by yourself, even if it feels that way. I have shied away from therapy sessions or group discussions or calling. There's so many resources you can call, and you can talk to someone, and you can share your experience. And I just thought, prior to this, I don't want to be a part of that. I have enough negativity on my own. Why do I want to share and have more burden?
Mm-hmm.
And it actually is the opposite. It's the opposite. And it's not ever comparing. It's not ever a situation of this is worse or this is better or it's instead more of a camaraderie. And if there can be a positive in cancer, because there's a lot of negative,
Mm-hmm.
but if there can be a positive, let the positive be that there are people that can share that journey with you and lighten your load, make that burden easier to bear. And I found that when I was there.
I think that one of the reasons that I brought up the support was that when I was doing my research for my interview with Linda, on the website, on the Casting for Recovery website, it mentions that 70% of the women who attend the Casting for Recovery retreat have never been to a support group. And I found that number staggering. And from what I'm hearing you say, is that a person should try to find what type of support is going to be a best match for them, because it's going to be different for everybody. It could be, an outdoor activity. It could be a group session in terms of being able to discuss and talk through different things. But what I'm and correct me please if I'm wrong, but what I think I'm hearing you say is that a person needs to try to find what works best for them.
Yes, absolutely. And in this case, I just happen to be, more of an outdoor person and have that history. But there were quite a few of the women there that did not have a background in, any type of fishing or, had never camped and were, not necessarily, outdoor type. And I would venture to guess that they had just as much of a overwhelming and wonderful experience as the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I do when I try to speak as well is if we as a society, if we as humans can try to take a positive from something that is just so incredibly horrible, it is to try to make cancer unifying.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether that be that we can sympathize and empathize, whether we can help other people in their journey, whether we can create awareness or education, whatever it might be. I just think that's so important. And I I felt like this weekend really reiterated that whole kind of mentality, because it truly does. I mean, it truly has affected everybody in one way or another, just like you said.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Lisa, thank you for sharing your story and your experience at the Casting for Recovery retreat. I think that again, our Unbroken Arrows podcast, our tagline is healing through the hunt, and that has a lot to do with my stepdaughter and I, who co-host the podcast. Our own journey. We started hunting together, turkey hunting primarily, and we talk a lot about that. But as I have progressed with regard to the podcast, I think that for me, it may be more accurate to say it's a hunt for healing. And that journey, I don't think will ever end. So I thank you for taking the time to join us and to share your story with those that are listening. And I would encourage all listeners to, if you're part of this journey, then take heed to Lisa's words with regard to at least looking for support in the different types of supports that are out there. And if you're somebody that, one of us that are impacted in cancer, even though you may not have been diagnosed with it, you can also be part of that support as well. And you can help in ways more than what you probably realize just by starting that conversation. So, Lisa, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for this mission that you do. And I like that you're hunting for healing, because it truly is something that, forever will be. But to live in the meantime is so very important.
It's
So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for the kind words as well. So before we go, Lisa, you said that you would be interested if Kansas would develop a chapter for Casting for Recovery, that you maybe in some way down the road might be able to get involved with that. So I guess to our listeners, anybody from Kansas, I'm going to encourage you to think about being the charter members or the founding members for the Casting for Recovery chapter in Kansas. That would be exciting if that was something that could happen. And the thing is, you're talking about fly fishing in a pond. When I first learned of Casting for Recovery and saw that it's, throughout the whole United States, but you don't need to have a river runs through it mentality for fly fishing. You can fly fish anywhere.
Definitely. And that's one thing that I didn't realize. So we certainly have opportunities here in Kansas, and we have a population of women that I think could be served very well by extending the Casting for Recovery mission to our state.
Well, for anybody listening, it's castingforrecovery.org is the website, and all the information that you would need is to look into taking part of a retreat or ways to help, whether it's a sponsorship with regard to money or equipment or anything like that, even starting a new chapter. I bet you can find information on that. So folks in Kansas, hope you're listening. Lisa, thank you again for being part of the Unbroken Arrows podcast.
Thank you.
My plan changed after I started the interview process for the Casting for Recovery podcast, as each participant had their unique story to tell about the weekend. Since October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I decided to go from one podcast to 3. You just heard the interview with Lisa Herkenrath, the participant that drove all the way from Kansas to attend the Casting for Recovery event in Nebraska. And next week, you will hear from Sherry Hoffman, a participant from Omaha. The third podcast, you'll hear from 2 of the team members that helped make the weekend a success. I hope you enjoy listening to these 3 podcasts as much as I enjoyed the conversations that I had with these 4 remarkable women. Our immediate family has experienced cancer-related deaths as a result of leukemia, prostate, and ovarian cancer. It would be safe to say that every one of us has had our lives impacted by cancer in some way. A healthy diet and exercise through outdoor activities has the potential to improve a person's physical and mental health. At any age, if you are active, stay active. If you are not as active as you'd like to be, it is not too late to start now as a way to improve both your physical and mental health. And if someone you know is thinking of suicide or in need of crisis intervention, call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. You have to remember that the world is a better place with you in it. To all our listeners, take some time to get outside. Enjoy the outdoors and experience its healing powers. With that, on behalf of Catherine and me, until next time.